The rain over London that night felt like it was trying to drown me personally, sleeting against the windows of our Notting Hill flat while I stood frozen in the doorway, soaked to the bone, holding a bouquet of white roses that Alexander always said reminded him of our wedding day. The flat was dark except for the cold blue glow of his open laptop on the kitchen table, the screen still awake because he'd rushed out to a client dinner and forgotten to close it. I clicked the email thread titled Final Transfer, Phase 3, and watched my entire world collapse in high definition. £11 million drained from Lamora, the sustainable skincare empire I'd built from a kitchen table in Leeds with nothing but grit and grief after Mum died, siphoned into offshore accounts through forgeries of my own looping signature that he'd perfected by tracing it while pretending to love the way I wrote my name. The final email, sent that same afternoon to a solicitor in the Caymans, read like a death sentence. She suspects nothing. The Positano anniversary trip next week will be the perfect distraction to empty the last accounts. Once we're married under Italian law, everything becomes community property anyway. By the time she notices, we'll be gone. I stood there so long the roses wilted in my fist, petals bleeding onto the hardwood like snow stained with guilt, until Alexander walked in at 11:47 smelling of someone else's perfume and cheap victory, loosening his tie with that charming smile that used to make me feel safe. He saw my face, saw the laptop, saw the petal crushed white in my hand, and for the first time in 4 years the mask slipped completely. He opened his mouth to lie, to charm, to twist reality the way he'd twisted my trust, but I didn't let him speak. I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "Take off the watch, the Patek Philippe I gave you the day you proposed, the one engraved forever starts today. Take it off right now." His fingers shook as he unclasped it, the metal clinking against the marble like the final nail in his coffin. And that was the moment I knew, the real revenge begins now. My name is Aria Quinn, 32 years old, the girl from a council estate in Leeds who turned grief into a £500 million beauty empire because I believed that if you worked hard enough and loved fiercely enough the world would eventually love you back. And I learned the hardest way possible that the world sometimes wears a bespoke suit and calls you darling, while picking your pockets clean. Alexander Whitlock was old money dressed in new lies, eaten polish over a rotten core, the kind of man who could quote poetry while planning robbery, who swept into my life at a charity gala when I was still raw from burying Mum and convinced me that I didn't have to do everything alone anymore. I gave him power of attorney because he said he wanted to protect me, gave him access to every account because he swore he only wanted to lighten my load, gave him my passwords whispered half asleep against his shoulder because love is supposed to be trust without conditions, and all the while he was bleeding me dry with a smile and a kiss on the forehead every night. That night with the dying roses I didn't scream, I didn't throw things, I poured myself a glass of the wine he loved and sat down to read every transfer, every forgery, every message where he laughed about how easy I was, how busy changing the world to notice my world disappearing. And by sunrise I had copied it all to an encrypted drive and called Priya, my barrister best friend who scares judges for a living, whispering, "I need you to help me bury him legally, slowly and so completely. He'll never breathe free air again." For the next 8 weeks I became the performance of a lifetime, the perfect trusting fiancé planning our anniversary trip to Positano with hearts in my text while Priya and a team of forensic accountants built a cage of evidence so airtight it could survive a nuclear blast. I left clues like breadcrumbs of poison, a bank statement circled in red, accidentally, on the counter, a quiet mention of updating my will, watching him sweat through dinner while pretending everything was fine, and every forced smile I gave him tasted like victory. I flew alone to New York, Paris, Dubai and sat across mahogany tables from every investor who'd poured money into Lamora, laid the evidence out like autopsy photos, and watched millionaires turn into attack dogs ready to tear Alexander apart to protect their own. His secret consulting firm, funded by my blood and sleepless nights, collapsed before it even launched. His LinkedIn went from champagne emojis to radio silence, and I sipped espresso in first class feeling the first real warmth since the night the roses died. We still went to Positano because I insisted, because I wanted him to see the exact place where his future ended. The villa clung to the cliff like a secret, infinity pool bleeding into the sea, bougainvillea dripping purple like bruises. And on the third night he got drunk on Negronis and proposed again on one knee by the water, slurring about fresh starts and second chances while the moon lit up the lies on his face. I let him finish, let him think he still had power, then handed him an envelope containing a photograph of him in bed with the married CFO of one of our biggest investors and a USB drive, whispering, "Watch it tonight, alone." The video was 23 minutes of his own voice bragging that I'd never notice, bank records scrolling like end credits, texts calling me easy, ending on security footage of me that first night, sitting at the table with dying roses while my heart broke in real time, and beneath it in my handwriting. Love is patient, love is kind, love does not steal 11 million pounds and call it protection. Security, 2 silent Italian mountains I'd hired, appeared from the bougainvillea and escorted him off the property while he screamed my name into the Amalfi night like it could still save him, and I stayed another week swimming every morning in water the color of the emeralds Mum left me, signing divorce papers that weren't even necessary yet because the prenup he'd insisted on worked both ways. Back in London, the Crown Prosecution Service was waiting with handcuffs and 11 counts that tasted like justice, fraud, theft, forgery, money laundering, and he took the plea because cowards always do, 3 years in an open prison and a lifetime ban from ever touching power again. I bought his family's crumbling Gloucestershire estate at auction for pennies on the pound and turned it into a retreat for women rebuilding after men like him, called it the Aria House, and on opening day I stood on the front steps in cream silk cutting the ribbon while cameras flashed, and somewhere in a prison day room Alexander watched the live stream and cried tears I would never waste on him again. The company is worth $500 million now. I'm 34 and every year on our would-be anniversary I fly to that same villa in Positano alone, sit by the infinity pool with a glass of something that costs more than his soul, and toast the empty chair across from me, one for the woman I am now, unbreakable, untouchable, richer in every way that matters, and one for the girl who once believed love was enough. She's gone. Something colder, clearer, and infinitely more dangerous took her place. The best revenge isn't loud, it isn't screaming or slapping or public scenes, it's the quiet click of a man realizing far too late that he didn't steal from a victim, he stole from the woman who would one day own the very ground he walks on, and now I do, completely, utterly, forever. Here is a brand new, completely original 50-minute revenge story with a male lead. My name is Noah Calder, and on the night I turned 35, I found out exactly how little my own blood was worth. I was in the back of an Uber crawling through downtown Seattle rain, soaked from a 12-hour shoot, when my phone lit up with a single push alert from Chase Bank. Your trust distribution of $18,400,000 has been processed. I laughed out loud. The driver glanced in the mirror like I was crazy, because I didn't have a trust. I'd grown up in a 3-bedroom ranch house in Tacoma with a mother who worked double shifts at Boeing and a father who fixed fishing boats. The only inheritance I'd ever been promised was my dad's old Leica camera, and a warning to never trust anyone who wears loafers without socks. So I called my sister Liv. She picked up on the first ring, voice already shaking. No, come to Mom's house. Now. The living room smelled like it always did, cedar and coffee, but tonight it smelled like a crime scene. My mother was on the couch, face in her hands. My sister stood behind her holding a thick manila folder like it was radioactive. And there, on the coffee table, sat a stack of documents that made the floor drop out from under me. A trust. Created the year I was born. Funded by quarterly deposits from a company I'd never heard of, Calder Maritime Holdings. My father's signature on every page. $18 million compounded over 35 years, meant to transfer to me the day I turned 35. Today. Except the balance now read $41,200.63. Every cent gone. Drained over the last 8 years into accounts registered to Olivia Calder and Margaret Calder. My sister. My mother. I looked up slowly. Liv couldn't meet my eyes. Mom was crying the way people cry when they've already spent the guilt. Noah, Mom whispered, we were drowning. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just asked one question very quietly. How long have you been planning this? Liv finally looked at me. Her face was blotched red the same way it used to get when we were kids, and she lied about breaking my toys. Since Dad died, she said. The medical bills. The house, we thought you'd never need it. You were always the one who made it out. You didn't need. I laughed then. A sound I didn't recognize. I was a commercial photographer who'd clawed my way from wedding gigs to shooting global campaigns for Nike and Patagonia. I'd paid for Mom's roof when it leaked. I'd covered Liv's rehab twice. I'd sent them money every month for 8 years while sleeping on friends' couches between jobs. And the entire time they'd been stealing my future to fund the present they refused to fix. I stood up, legs strangely calm. Take off the necklace, I told my mother. She froze. The sapphire one. The one Dad gave you on your 30th anniversary. The one you told me you'd sold to pay bills. Her hand flew to her throat. Noah. Take it off. She did. Fingers shaking so hard the clasp scratched her skin. I took it from her palm. It was warm. And that was the moment I knew. The real revenge begins now. I didn't speak to them again that night. I walked out into the rain and called the one person I still trusted. Marcus Park, my best friend since film school, now a partner at the most feared litigation firm in the Pacific Northwest. By morning we had a plan. Phase 1, silence. I ghosted them completely. No calls. No texts. Blocked on everything. Let them stew in the vacuum. Phase 2, discovery. Marcus filed emergency restraining orders on the remaining funds and subpoenaed every bank record, every email, every Venmo transaction going back a decade. What we found was worse than theft. It was a lifestyle. Private schools for Liv's kids. A condo in Maui. Mom's little procedures in Bellevue. Cruises. Designer bags. A Tesla Model X with custom plates that read Live in 42. All paid for with money that was never theirs. Phase 3, the mirror. I started posting. Not rants. Not accusations. Just memories. Old family photos on my private Instagram story. Dad teaching me to develop film in the garage darkroom. Me at 16 handing Mom my first paycheck from the photo lab. Liv and me on the ferry to Bainbridge the summer before she got bad. I captioned each one with the date and a single line. Wonder what Dad would think. Within days, mutual friends were asking questions. Liv's perfect PTA mom facade started cracking. Phase 4. The inheritance. Here's the twist they never saw coming. Dad hadn't just set up one trust. He'd set up two. The second one, bigger, locked tighter, administered by a corporate trustee in Zurich, was keyed to the first. If anyone ever touched the primary trust improperly, the secondary automatically activated and transferred everything to a donor-advised fund in my name only. 18 million was the bait. 47 million was the trap. Dad had known his wife and daughter better than any of us ever admitted. The day the Zurich wire hit my account, I bought the house I grew up in, out from under them at sheriff's auction. Mom had stopped making payments 6 months earlier, assuming I'd never find out. I had it painted the exact shade of the darkroom safe light Dad and I used to work under. Blood red. Then I turned it into a free photography mentorship program for kids from single-parent homes. Named it the Thomas Calder Foundation. Opening day I stood on the front porch, the same porch where Dad taught me to see the world through a lens, and cut the ribbon while local news filmed. Liv showed up. Uninvited. Gaunt. Wearing clothes that didn't fit anymore. He tried to walk past security. I let her get as far as the driveway. Then I handed her a single 8x10 print. It was a photo I'd taken the night I found out. Mom on the couch, Liv behind her holding the folder, both of them lit by the orange glow of the lamp we'd had since I was 5. On the back in my handwriting. Some things you can't crop out. She looked at me with eyes that used to be mine. No, please. I didn't answer. I just turned around and walked inside the house that was mine now, the darkroom still in the garage exactly where Dad left it, and closed the door. The program thrives. Kids who remind me of who I was before Betrayal learn to develop film, chase light, tell their own stories. Mom lives in a studio apartment in Federal Way. Liv's ex took the kids after the truth came out. They still send letters. Apologies. Excuses. Birthday cards with $20 bills tucked inside like that fixes anything. I never write back. Some debts can't be paid with money. They can only be paid with memory. Every year on my birthday I develop one roll of film in the darkroom Dad built. Just me, the red light, the smell of fixer, and the quiet knowledge that the man who really loved me made sure I'd never need anyone else to survive. I am 38 now. I own 3 houses I actually live in, a studio in Soho, and a cabin on Orcas Island where the only sound is water and wind. I am wealthy beyond anything they ever touched. But the real wealth? It's the morning I wake up and realize I haven't thought about them in weeks. It's the kid who just sold his first print because I gave him a camera and a safe place to be angry. It's knowing that the 2 women who tried to bury me are the ones living underground now. And every time I lift Dad's old Leica to my eye, I still hear his voice. Light writes the truth, Noah. Always has. Always will. They stole my trust. I took back my future. And I made it brighter than they could ever imagine.